Back in freshman year of high school, my friend Nate came up with what he thought was a brilliant plan. He wanted to pursue this new girl he liked, and to get his ex off his back, he tried to set me up with his ex-girlfriend. I should have seen the warning signs when we first met. At a track meet later that year, Nate orchestrated another accidental run-in with the three of us, and the awkward silence was really painful. When she finally opened her mouth to say something, she was all like, no, I can't date Trey because I already dated you, Nate. When we finally got a moment alone, Nate sighed and told me what I already suspected.
Okay, let's just be honest, man.
He said, shifting uncomfortably.
It's because of your skin color.
I'm not gonna lie, it stung at first, but honestly, it felt great to hear it from someone else. Roll the intro.
Yikes, Drake. Have you tried being confident?
I know people in my comment section are telling me to make videos on the race pill and how South Asian guys have it so tough in the dating market. Oh dude, when's the race pill video gonna come, bro? But like, what do you even want me to say? Like, what can I possibly say that hasn't been said before? It doesn't exactly take a detective to figure out that being Indian significantly diminishes your chances of getting girls. I mean, sure, 5 years ago, maybe it wasn't as well known back then, and I'll admit, it was a mind-blowing revelation for me back then to find out about the race pill and all that. But now, even the average person on TikTok knows that Indian people have it way worse in the dating market. I mean, just take a look at all those Indian or Somali memes. Before we get into this video, I'm gonna explain why I'm putting this video on members only. The thing is, YouTube doesn't really like JBW content, so it's gonna get demonetized and potentially strike if I leave it out there. You might say, oh Dre, that doesn't matter. But even outside of the money I need to keep my subscriptions for editing software, the truth is, if I leave it out there, the normies who click on that video would turn it into an absolute bloodbath. And they wouldn't even try to get it. That's the worst part. They just cope and be like, oh, but I know an Indian guy who gets so many women, not realizing that the exception doesn't make the rule. Thanks again to you guys who went ahead and got a membership. It helps me tremendously. Seems I invested a few $100s on editing software and stuff to make videos for you guys. Just recently, I had someone DM me on Discord basically telling me she liked my channel and all that, and I thanked her accordingly, and we exchanged a bit of a back and forth. She's eventually like, oh, are you depressed? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm kind of used to this. Frustrated, yes, but not depressed. And then she starts asking me about my experience. And guys, this is the trap. They ask you what your experience is, and then it turns into a pseudo interview, which I'm not the biggest fan of personally. I always feel like the people on the outside kind of treat us like zoo animals when they ask us these sorts of questions. And honestly, it's kind of condescending. I know she didn't mean it that way, but that's kind of the vibe I got. Finally, they'll start debating you and trying to change your mind. I remember she was like, oh, I don't think South Asian men are any worse than any other race of men. Just be proud of your race, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. And then I asked her out of curiosity, if she really thought that all races of men were equal SMV, then how many South Asian guys she's dated? And of course, she's dating a white guy.
If if an Indian guy came up to you in the bar or in the club, would you consider dating him?
Yeah.
So have you ever dated an Indian guy at all?
No.
And funny enough, she said she's dated women of all races, so why is it that she's only dated a white guy? But I have to give her credit where credit's due. At least she acknowledged that South Asian guys face discrimination in the dating market, and that's still further than where most normies get, where they just completely are colorblind to any sort of discrimination at all. Now, that being said, she did misinterpret the cause, claiming it was a result of unfavorable media portrayals. I believe that the media may occasionally impact attitudes, such as in the case of East Asians, where we've actually seen a boost in their SMV because of K-pop, K-dramas, anime, all that good stuff. But the poor image in the media for South Asians is a product of long-standing negative prejudices, not the other way around. But even then, she got further than most normies, as I said above, admitting that there is some sort of discrepancy, so it's still some progress. And on top of that, I'm not saying she's inherently malicious either. I don't think she's saying this to taunt us or anything, but I still do feel like it's definitely ego-driven, very reminiscent of the savior complex. These people think that they're making some huge impact by being the one to save us and magically make us become blue-pilled. They all think that they're the ones who can pull King Arthur's sword out of this metaphorical stone. People can try to convince me otherwise all day, but nothing short of actually having a girlfriend is gonna change my mind. The problem with complaining about the discrepancy race plays in the market is you can't really complain to begin with without someone shutting it down or saying it's not real. Oh dude, stop playing the race card. No, I'm not going to stop playing the race card. Imagine for a second that you and your best friend work at the same job. Every day, you both earn $100 for your work, but there's a catch. Right before you clock out, your manager pulls you aside and takes $30 from your earnings, while your friend gets to keep their full pay. Later that day, you both head to the mall to shop for clothes. Your friend with their complete $100, easily buys a new shirt, pants, and shoes. Meanwhile, you're carefully counting what's left of your $70, realizing you can only afford the shirt and the pants. As you're explaining why you have to pass on the shoes, your friend looks at you with confusion and says, "Dude, why can't you buy the shoes too?" You don't seem to understand that the missing $30, money you rightfully earned but never received, is exactly what's keeping those shoes out of your reach. And that's basically the same problem with having a South Asian phenotype. It effectively bottlenecks your SMV, that no matter how much effort you try to put in, you will always lose 3 points from your actual objective overall SMV based on measurable proportions and all that jazz. Even if you look at the data from the surveys, you can see that South Asians are typically responded to the least. Surprise, surprise. And you might be wondering why South Asians have such a low SMV. First of all, South Asians typically have unfavorable coloring. I think a lot of people are too scared to admit it, but most people would agree that lighter skin is objectively seen as more attractive compared to darker skin. Not to mention that most South Asians have the same dark T50 eyes, with very few having that lighter color. I hear a lot of copers online say that they prefer darker eyes and that lighter eyes look freaky, but I know for a fact that they would switch out their eye color with a lighter one if given the chance. And it's not just because of coloring alone, but also other genetic factors. Smaller frames on average, worse muscle building genes. Many South Asians faced famines, leading to the populations now being scrawnier on average. When I was a kid, I made the mistake of running cross country and track. My mother always warned me against doing this, since she knew I would just embarrass myself compared to the larger and faster kids. But being the ambitious kid I was, I eagerly wanted to do it, and every year I would just fail miserably and get clowned on. I was incredibly dedicated my freshman year and worked as hard as I could to be as fast as the other kids on the team. And with every season that passed, I lost the motivation. I was the only senior on our team to not break 5 minutes for the mile. I was close though. I think my personal time was 5 minutes 15 seconds on my final mile time ever. But compare this to the school cross-country star athlete, Caden, who ran a 4:55 his freshman year. I'm not saying I was the hardest worker in the world, especially towards the end, but I now realize in hindsight, I never really stood a chance. I really do regret running cross-country now that I'm older. I just looked like a loser and never really made any lasting friends, save for one or two who would probably sell me on the deep web for a few lines of coke. When you're South Asian, or really any other ethnicity, but especially South Asian, the vast majority of people can't really take the time to analyze your facial structure or your actual looks level. If you lined up 10 ethnic men and asked a woman to rate them, I would be willing to bet that she would not only take longer to rank them, but she would also rate them all similarly, with less variance throughout the rating. Now, if you were to ask her to rate 10 white guys, I'd be willing to bet she'd have a much easier time rating those guys, and their ratings would be more scattered across the 1 to 10 scale compared to the ethnic guys. This is partially because I think women are less likely to think about how to rate ethnic guys. The ideal man typically has Caucasoid features. They probably don't dream about some ethnic guy the same way you and I don't dream about Gorlok the Destroyer. And I'll admit, I'm just as guilty of this myself. If you look at all the white women I've been attracted to versus all the ethnic women I've found attractive, the white ones had objectively less attractive features, whereas the standards were raised significantly for the ethnic women to be considered attractive to me. On top of physical characteristics, people have a very negative stigma of South Asians in the West, who are seen as creeps, rapists, and just general scourges on society. I remember I had a friend named Ned, who I've spoken about in previous videos, who went to the psychiatric ward back in November. Funny enough, I had 2 friends go to the same ward within the same week, but in different wings at the same center. Anyway, Ned went to the North Unit, with less insecurity and more freedoms. And keep in mind, he went there for suicidal and homicidal ideations, so that really says a lot about the people they kept at the South Unit. But I'm getting off topic. When Ned got out like a week later, we were driving around town in my car, and he explained how his mom visited him in the psychiatric ward to basically yell at him and call him misogynist, which is super weird since he hasn't really been interested in dating, and the only women I've seen him talk to are blood relatives. His mom asked him if he watched Andrew Tate, to which he said no, and then she replied by saying,
"Well, maybe you have negative views on women because your best friend comes from a misogynistic culture,"
referring to me. It's not like Ned even told her about how I talk about the PSL community and stuff like that. I'm not even sure how she reached that conclusion. But the reason why I bring this up is that even women, who are typically seen as the more accepting gender, are secretly revolted by South Asians. Like you would think after knowing someone for 16 years, she wouldn't make such assumptions. Brutal stuff, man. But the truth is, this is how they all feel about us. I remember a few months ago on TikTok, there was this trend that hoped to change this, where Indian SMV was rumored to spike up due to the sudden internet fame. People dubbed this the Great Shift, which is like the stupidest fucking name I've ever heard, by the way. But the thing is, just like K-pop maxing, the Great Shift is only giving the spotlight to guys with Eurocentric features. Let's put it that way. Lighter skin, light eyes, white facial structure. I think the example of Nick Kaufman is not talked about here enough. I remember always wanting to look like this pretty boy Chad-like TikTok sensation when I was in high school, but every day after coming back from practice, I told told myself I was gonna look like Nick Kaufman and escape this nightmare, and someday I would be a Chad like him, and I would have women flocking to me after I look smaxed. 3 years later, still empty and broken inside as ever. Nothing really changed for me even in college. I'm still studying to be a beta bucks, while Nick over here becomes a model and leaves his computer science major behind. Nick Kaufman, for me, is like what Jeremy Meeks is for the rest of you guys. Just an absolute brutal reminder of the power of looks. And of course, he's just as delusional as Chico and Sean O'Pry about how much he lucked out in life. I remember a video of his where Nick got so mad at a commenter under his videos since the guy rightfully told him that the only reason he was famous was because he had half-white DNA.
This might be like the dumbest comment I ever had, especially because I look like my mom with blue eyes, so that's her when she was younger. That's her now. Yeah, you're wrong.
Oh, what is this guy saying?
In Nick's mind, it had to be because of his hard work ethic, not because of his bones and his eye color that made him a bona fide mogger. And the cruelest part is, his sister had less luck when it came to genetic recombination. That's the thing with genetics. Numerous factors outside of your control can significantly influence your success. Even if Nick's dad was still white, but his mother was South Indian instead of North Indian, I assure you his eye color would not be any lighter than a hazel brown. Certainly not the signature green he has today. And that's if he was lucky. Eye color is another brutal JBW pill for you all. But now that the great shift trend has died down, it's just back to Indian hate all over TikTok. I'm not even Indian, and I find it annoying at this point. By the way, if anyone's confused, I am South Asian, but I'm not Indian. Not that women can tell the difference though. I sometimes sit back and think to myself, after doing all this looks maxing and working on myself, did it even make a significant difference? If you look at all those looks maxers who quote unquote made it, like Livicular, pneumocytosis, Arvid Gustafsson, you notice that all those guys had white phenotypes to begin with. Even the guys like Salyadon and Jawad don't seem to have the same level of SMV or female attraction, despite having good facial structure. Truthfully, being ethnic is a massive bottleneck to your SMV. Even if you're facially a Chad-light Indian dude, your SMV is pretty much capped at a 6 out of 10. I'm sorry to break it to you. It's not like South Asians can just geomax. I know some people say you can go to another country and ascend that way, but truthfully, there isn't a single country where South Asians have a higher SMV than the native populations. The best you could do is maybe beta bucks poor women, but even then the attraction is mainly through financial means. Recently, there have been protests on DEI being removed by Trump around colleges and stuff in the United States, and most of my liberal female acquaintances always talk about how DEI is necessary for underprivileged people to have a spot in the workplace and whatnot, but those female acquaintances are the same ones who can't wrap their head around the fact that South Asians have it harder in the dating market, despite the fact that many of them are South Asian themselves. These are the same people who talk about how attractive the guys around campus are, and whenever they show you a picture, it's always some mid-tier normie white guy. Unless, of course, I point this fact out to them, to which they say, "Oh no, I like all races of guys." And then they show me a mixed guy to virtue signal. Like, guys, I kid you not. I was talking to this Indian girl, and she was all like, "Oh, well, I find Neymar kind of attractive and he's not white." That was her counter argument, guys. Neymar, who is mostly white. I know race is a touchy subject for a lot of people. You gotta stop blaming yourself for your physical shortcomings. And this goes for everyone, not just South Asians. Any physical shortcoming you have, whether it's bad facial proportions, a short height, you gotta stop blaming yourself for that. I wish I really sat down and realized just how much was determined before I even had a chance. That woman who DM'd me on Discord was right. You have to realize that a lot of this isn't your fault to begin with, and a lot of your success is in the hands of other people. That being said, I don't agree with her take of trying to be a voice of change. Like, look at how the whole Great Shift meme has died down. Since then, I've realized nothing's really gonna change in our lifetimes. I'm still gonna be here, Ace Gotchu is still gonna be beefing with looks maxers, Avanish is gonna keep gesture maxing, Bala is gonna keep fishing for sympathy. The world keeps spinning, and I don't see a huge change in the dating market overall for South Asians. But yeah, that's all I had for this video. Thanks again for being a supporter, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
This is a certified PSL classic.